Hi everybody. We're going to look at using named ranges with research data in Excel. These are some tips and tricks that will definitely help streamline some of your research analysis. We'll switch over to my research data set to get started. And so what we can see here is some kinesiology lab research data. We've got subject numbers, we've got ages, we've got height in centimeter, some body fat, body mass index, weight, etc. And so we've got lots and lots of data in here that were taken out of a kinesiology lab. And so we want to do some research calculations, probably the standard ones here, mean and standard deviation. And let's focus in on age for this example. And so what we would probably do is maybe create a new worksheet, and I would probably put in something like average age, and then I would type a standard formula where I find an average of everything in the B column. So it's going to look at the data set sheet in the B column, and parenthesis, I hit enter, and there's my average age. And so this is the traditional or standard way to do it, is we write formulas like this that use a reference to a worksheet and a series or range of cells. Now, this is, again, the traditional way to do it, but there are much faster ways to do this. And I'm going to do this using named ranges. So I'm going to get rid of what I've done. I'll go back to data set. Now, chances are I'm not going to always remember that age is in column B, that BMI is in column G, and so forth through all of our different pieces of data. And so we can streamline this by naming our data ranges. To do that, we use named ranges in Excel. And that is found in your Formulas tab. So I'll go up to Formulas, and notice right in the middle here we have a Define Names or Named Range area. And we have a Name Manager. We can define names, or we can create from a selection. I'm going to start first of all by just simply defining a name. So I'll click on Define Name, and notice I'm in the B column, and it sees, oh, this is probably age. But right now it's only referring to cell B2 because that's all I've selected. If I want to specifically set a range of cells, I'll click on this little red arrow, and I'll select the cells that I want to work with. And maybe I only want to work with the cells to the end of the data down here. I can do that. So it comes down through B2 through B100. I can see that here. I enter it with the red arrow. So now it says the name age is associated with B2 through B100 on this worksheet. And I click OK. So now the name age refers to B2 through B100 on this worksheet. What does that mean? Well, that means we can use the word age to reference that range of cells in any of our formulas. So I could come over to another worksheet, and I can type in equals average, left parenthesis, and I can start typing in age. And notice there's a little tag here. This is one of our named ranges. I click age and parenthesis, and this is going to find the average of the age data. And there it is. This makes it a lot easier. I can do things, of course, like find the standard deviation of our sample for age. I hit enter, and there's our standard deviation. So again, it's much easier to name a range, and then you can do anything you want with that name. I'm going to delete those again and come back to our data set. If we want to see what we have named in our workbook, we can come up to the Name Manager, and notice there's age, and there's what it refers to. We can make changes to it if we want to by clicking on the little red arrow and redefining our cells, or we can get rid of it completely if we want to. I can select it, I can hit delete and click OK, and the word age is gone. So that's no longer a named range. Now, possibly I'll be adding additional data to this data set later, and so I might want to define a name that is going to continually look at new data. The way we did it before, remember we looked at B2 through B100 way down here, but that means anything added below that will not be included in the named range. To include new data in your named range, what we'll do is we'll select the entire B column by clicking on the B up here. And now you'll notice that selects not only to B100, but all the way down to 1 million plus rows. And then what we'll do is we'll click on Create from Selection. And we want the name to come from the top row. I'll click OK. And we'll go to Name Manager, and we can see that now age is from B2 through B 1,048,576. So we could add a lot of data, and it will always now be included in the word age, and we can do calculations off of the word age. This is useful, but keep in mind that if you do this with a lot of columns, then it could potentially slow down your system if you're using a computer that is not very powerful, because it's constantly calculating down 1 million rows of blank cells looking for data. And it will do that for every single column you define. So if you don't have a very powerful system, this could create performance issues. I haven't run into any issues when I only do this on a few columns, but then I also usually run quite powerful systems. So I'm going to hit close, and now again we can come over here, equals average age, enter, and there's my average. And what's nice is if I do add new data down here, like maybe I have somebody who's 150 years old, not likely, but notice what it did to your average. It did change your average. I delete the data. Notice it did change your average. So it's looking at the blank cells for new data. We're gonna remove this because I have a really nice little demonstration to show you how we can speed things up a little bit. So I'm going to go back here and remove all of our different named ranges. And I want to create named ranges for all of our data fields, for age, for height, body fat, BMI, weight, and everything else that we have here. And I don't want to do this one by one. I want to do this all at once. And to do that, as long as I'm clicked in my data, if I press Control A, it selects all of my data. And that's from your upper left-hand corner of your data down to, you'll see down here, the bottom right-hand corner of your data. And so Control A again selects everything. And let's do that again. I click in here, I press Control A, selects the entire set of data. Then I come up here to Create from Selection. And I tell it to name everything off of the top row. Now, we do have to be careful of naming, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but naming things in Excel named ranges require us to follow a few rules. And so these are our rules we have to follow. The names have to begin with a letter, or an underscore, or a backslash. They can't begin with a number. That's an important rule to remember. Also, your names can't contain spaces. It also can't contain most of your punctuation characters. And it will actually cause issues if you try to name something that has a space or certain punctuation characters in it. You probably don't want to do that anyway, because if you try to import this into certain programs like SPSS, you can't have spaces in the names anyway. Names are also not case sensitive, so you don't have to worry about if something is uppercase or lowercase. And we'll see that I've already fixed these. There were a few names that had spaces in them. Notice the underscore is in place of spaces. You'll also notice that they all start with letters instead of numbers. A few of these had numbers at the start, and I had to change the name a little bit. So when you're naming your fields, if you plan on using named ranges, remember those rules. So our names are going to all work because they've all now following those rules. Create names from values in the top row. Fantastic. Let's click OK. I go to my name manager and notice it created a named range for every single column of data, which is much faster than doing it individually. Notice it isn't going past row 100. We would have to make some changes if we wanted it to do that, but for now this is going to work because I'm done with my data collection. So I have named ranges for everything. I want to find the mean and standard deviation for all of my numerical data. I'm going to select all of row 1, right-click and copy. I'll come to another worksheet. I'll go to a cell like A2 to give myself a little bit of room and right click. And I don't want to paste the data because it'll paste it in this row. I want to paste it along the side here. So I want to transpose my data. Notice it took all of your fields that we copied and put them down the A column now. And I'm going to left align everything and of course widen the column, and we're ready to go. Now I'm going to be finding the mean and the standard deviation for each of these. Maybe I'll highlight these, make them a little wider, center align just to get ready for this. I don't need to find the mean and standard deviation for the subject number. Delete that. I also don't need to do that for gender or ethnicity. I'll delete those. But the rest of these are numerical data where I do want to find the mean and standard deviation. Now remember, these are named ranges, so I could do something like equals average age, and there's age. I can either type it in or select it, and it puts it in there. But I would have to do that for each of these. I would have to come down here and type in equals average, start typing in height. There it is. Hit enter and do that all the way down. That seems like a lot of time that I don't want to spend. I'd have to do that for standard deviation as well. So I'm going to try a little bit of a trick here. Instead, I'm going to go to equals average, and you'd think that you'd be able to click on the A2 cell and dump the word age in here, and it would use it as a named range. Let's try that. I click on A2, right parenthesis, I hit enter, and it doesn't work. And it's because it's actually trying to average the text age, and it's going to give me a division by 0. It just doesn't know how to do that. So that's not going to work for us, this formula here. And that's again because it's trying to average the actual text that's in that cell. But there is a special formula that we can use, a special function that we can use that will fix this, and it's called indirect. So if I type in equals average left parenthesis, indirect left parenthesis, and then I reference this cell over here, so I type in A2 right parenthesis, right parenthesis, so I closed off indirect, and then I closed off average. I hit enter, and it worked. There's the mean for age. And this is the formula. So what indirect does is it says that instead of calculating or figuring out the actual text in A2, something in A2 must reference something else. And so it's going to use whatever is in A2 as a reference. And remember, we created a named range, and so it's actually going to reference the named range. What's nice about this is that I'm going to be able to easily drag this down, and it's always going to look over here at these different words, each of which is a name of a range. So average indirect A2, that should work. Let's do the same thing over here for standard deviation. I start typing in standard deviation. Again, let's do this just for our sample. Standard deviation P is for an entire population. This is for our sample right here. We're going to pick this, and again, indirect, because we want to use whatever is here as a reference to a named range. Right parenthesis to close indirect, right parenthesis to close standard deviation. There's my standard deviation. So now I should be able to select both of these cells, go to this bottom little corner here in the bottom right, and double click on it. And it will figure out mean and standard deviation for all of your data.